There's a hierarchy in the dark, pressurized world beneath our feet. We tend to think of gemstones as pretty little pebbles that we dig up, polish, and put in rings. We look at the colors, red, blue, green, and we think they're all just variations of the same sparkly theme. But that's a lie. In the brutal geology of the Earth's crust, there are the warriors and there are the poets. There are stones that can survive a nuclear blast, and stones that will shatter if you look at them the wrong way. We call them the Big Three: ruby, sapphire, emerald. They're the holy trinity of colored stones. They're the ones that fetch millions at auction. They're the ones that adorn the crowns of kings and the necks of movie stars. But here's the secret that jewelers rarely tell you. Two of them are siblings, forged from the same invincible material, while the third is a fragile, flawed chemical accident that barely holds itself together. Welcome to the Mystic Apothecary. I'm Cody. Tonight, we're going deep into the crystal lattice. We're going to tear apart the chemistry of the Big Three. We're going to pit the heavy, violent Corundum family against the fragile, intricate Beryl family. We're going to look at why a ruby is just a sapphire with a bad temper, and why an emerald is basically a piece of geological glass held together by oil and prayer. Let's start with the heavyweights, the Corundum family. If you were a mineral, you'd want to be Corundum. It's aluminum oxide, Al2O3. It sounds boring, like something you'd find in a deodorant stick. But in the mineral world, this stuff is a tank. On the Mohs hardness scale, diamond is a 10, corundum is a 9. It's the second hardest natural substance on the planet. It's an abrasive. We actually use low-grade corundum to make sandpaper. Think about that. The same material that cuts steel is the same material sitting in the Queen of England's brooch. Corundum is pure, stoic, and normally it's colorless. But nature hates purity. Nature loves contamination. When you take that aluminum oxide crystal and you sprinkle in a few atoms of chromium, something magical happens. The crystal structure gets distorted. It starts to absorb green and violet light. It spits out red, intense, glowing red. We call this ruby. Ruby is the king. In Sanskrit, they called it Ratnaraj, the king of gems. And it earned that title not just because of the color, but because of the way it behaves in the light. Rubies are fluorescent. The chromium doesn't just color the stone, it reacts to ultraviolet light. When sunlight hits a Burmese ruby, it glows from within. It looks like there's a burning coal trapped inside the stone. This is why the ancients believed rubies could boil water. They believed if you put a ruby in a glass of water, the heat from the stone would make the liquid bubble. They believed it was solidified blood, and in a way they were right. It's the blood of the earth, colored by the same element that makes our blood red, just swapped for a different metal. But rubies are rare. Geologically, they shouldn't exist. Silica is everywhere in the Earth's crust. It's the most common mineral. But silica and corundum are enemies. If silica is present, it eats the aluminum and turns it into something else. So for a ruby to form, you need a geological miracle. You need a silica-poor environment, usually marble, where the aluminum can crystallize in peace. That's why the Mogok Valley in Myanmar is so special. It's a geological anomaly that produced the finest pigeon's blood rubies in history. Now let's look at the ruby's brother, sapphire. They're the exact same stone. If you took a ruby and swapped the chromium for a little bit of iron and titanium, it turns blue. That's it. That's the only difference. A sapphire is just a ruby that's feeling a little cold. But because they're the same mineral, sapphires share that incredible hardness. They're virtually indestructible. You can wear a sapphire ring every day for 50 years, bang it against door frames, dig in the garden with it, and it will look exactly the same as the day you bought it. Historically, sapphires were the stone of the clergy and the stone of protection. The deep blue was associated with the heavens. Cardinals wore sapphire rings to symbolize their link to God. But there's a specific type of sapphire that reveals the true structure of the stone, the star sapphire. Inside the crystal, as it grows, tiny needles of a mineral called rutile can get trapped. Rutile is titanium dioxide. These needles align themselves perfectly with the crystal's hexagonal structure. They form a three-way grid. When you cut the stone into a smooth dome, a cabochon, the light reflects off those needles and creates a six-rayed star that glides across the surface. The ancients called this asterism. They thought it was a living spirit inside the stone. The three crossed lines were thought to represent faith, hope, and destiny. Sir Richard Francis Burton, the famous explorer, carried a large star sapphire with him on his travels. He said it bought him safe passage through bandit country because the locals thought he was a sorcerer carrying a trapped demon. So that's corundum. It's the warrior. It's hard, dense, heavy, and tough. It feels substantial in your hand. It has a high specific gravity, meaning a 1-carat ruby is actually smaller than a 1-carat diamond because the material is so packed together. It's the introverted, stoic survivor of the gem world. Now let's cross the aisle, let's look at the Beryl family. If Corundum is the warrior, Beryl is the aristocrat. It's flashy, it's complicated, and it falls apart under pressure. Beryl is beryllium aluminum cyclosilicate. It forms in these massive, beautiful 6-sided hexagonal columns. If you've ever seen pictures of giant crystals that look like pillars, that's usually Beryl. It's lighter than Corundum, it's less dense, and it's softer. On the Mohs scale, it's a 7.5 to an 8. That sounds close to a 9, but the scale is logarithmic. A sapphire is exponentially harder than a beryl. Dust in the air contains quartz, which is a 7. Over time, dust will scratch a beryl. It won't scratch a sapphire. Beryl comes in many colors. If it's blue, we call it aquamarine. If it's pink, we call it morganite. If it's yellow, it's heliodor. But if it's green, if it's that deep, velvety, impossible green, we call it emerald. Emeralds are the problem child of the gem world. They're colored by chromium, just like rubies. But the crystal structure of beryl doesn't handle impurities as well as corundum does. When an emerald grows, it's usually happening in a chaotic environment, hydrothermal veins, hot pressurized water forcing its way through rock. Because of this violent birth, emeralds are almost never clean. They're full of cracks. They're full of gas bubbles. They're full of tiny crystals of other minerals like salt and calcite. French jewelers have a beautiful name for this mess. They call it the jardin, the garden. They tried to reframe the flaws as a feature. They said, look into the stone and you'll see a mossy garden of inclusions. It's romantic, but from a structural standpoint, it's a nightmare. An emerald is like a car windshield that's already cracked. If you hit it the wrong way, the stress propagates and the whole thing shatters. That's why you almost never see emeralds in a simple prong setting like a diamond solitaire. They need protection. They're usually set in bezels, surrounded by metal, to keep them from getting knocked. And here's the dirty little secret about emeralds that the industry tries to whisper. Almost all of them are treated. Because they have so many surface-reaching fractures, gem cutters have been doing something for centuries. They soak the stones in oil. Cedarwood oil is the traditional choice. The oil seeps into the cracks. Because the oil has a similar refractive index to the beryl, it makes the cracks disappear. It's an optical illusion. It makes a cloudy, fractured stone look transparent and glowing. If you take an emerald ring and put it in an ultrasonic cleaner, those vibrating water baths jewelers use, the vibrations will shake the oil right out of the stone. You'll put a beautiful green gem in and you'll pull out a white cracked piece of rock. The magic spell is broken. This fragility is part of the allure. It represents a kind of decadent vulnerability. Cleopatra was obsessed with emeralds. The oldest mines in the world were in Egypt, the so-called Cleopatra mines. But those stones were actually quite poor quality. They were pale and full of inclusions. The real game changer happened when the Spanish conquistadors reached the New World. They found the Incas and the Aztecs dripping in emeralds that made the Egyptian stones look like gravel. These were the Colombian emeralds, the stones from Muzo and Chivor. These stones were darker, richer, and had a blue undertone that screamed wealth. The Spanish went crazy for them. They looted thousands of pounds of emeralds and shipped them back to Europe. But because emeralds are brittle, and because Spanish galleons had a habit of sinking in storms, the ocean floor is currently littered with millions of dollars worth of beryl. There's a famous shipwreck, the Atocha, that sank in 1622. When treasure hunters found it in the 1980s, they found thousands of rough emeralds. They had been sitting in the salt water for 300 years. And you know what? They looked fine. Beryl is chemically resistant. It's just physically weak. It can survive the ocean, but it can't survive a hammer. So why do we value them so highly? Why is a top quality emerald often more expensive per carat than a diamond? It's the color. The human eye is more sensitive to green than any other color. It's an evolutionary trait. We need to see green to find food, to find water, to spot predators in the grass. When we see the specific green of a chromium-rich emerald, it triggers something primal in our brain. It's lush, it's life, it's the color of paradise. There's no other stone that does it. Tourmaline is green, but it's too dark or too olive. Peridot is green, but it's too yellow. Favorite garnet is close, but it lacks the soft, velvety glow that the jardin creates. The flaws in the emerald actually help scatter the light and give it that sleepy, romantic look. Let's talk about the inclusions specifically, because this is how gemologists tell them apart. If you look into a ruby under a microscope, you're looking for silk. Those rutile needles I mentioned earlier. You might also find fingerprints, which are tiny healed fractures that look exactly like a human fingerprint. If you look into a sapphire, you see color zoning, straight lines of blue and white where the crystal grew in pulses. You see hexagonal growth lines. it looks like geometry class. But if you look into an emerald, you see chaos. You see three-phase inclusions. This is the fingerprint of a Colombian emerald. It's a tiny cavity inside the stone that contains three things: a liquid, usually salty water, a gas bubble, usually carbon dioxide, and a solid crystal, usually rock salt. It's a microscopic time capsule of the hydrothermal soup the emerald grew in 50 million years ago. It's amazing when you think about it. You're looking at a bubble of water that has been trapped inside a gemstone since the dinosaurs died out. So, how do you choose? If you're standing at the counter of the Mystic Apothecary, and I offer you a box of Corundum or a box of Beryl, which one matches your soul? If you choose Corundum, the ruby or the sapphire, you're choosing resilience. You're choosing a stone that is stubborn. It formed in metamorphic rock, crushed by the collision of continents. It's the product of pressure. It's a stone for the survivor. It's a stone for the person who wants to leave a legacy that will last 1,000 years. If you choose Beryl, the emerald, or the aquamarine, you're choosing complexity. You're choosing a stone that grew in the veins of the earth, carried by water. It's a stone that admits it's flawed. It wears its scars openly. It requires care. You can't just throw it in a drawer. You have to oil it. You have to protect it. It's a relationship. There's a darkness to both of them, though. The ruby trade has been fueled by blood for centuries. The mines in Mogok are notorious. The sapphire mines in Sri Lanka and Madagascar have seen their share of exploitation. And the emerald mines of Colombia, they were literally war zones for decades. The green wars of the 1980s saw emerald barons fighting private wars with private armies over the rights to dig in the mud. These stones are beautiful, but they come from the dirt. They come from poverty and violence and heat and pressure. We clean them up, we facet them, we put them in platinum, but we can't wash away the geology. And the geology is indifferent to us. That's the most dark academia realization of all. The emerald doesn't care that it's fragile. The ruby doesn't care that it's rare. They are just arrangements of atoms, obeying the laws of physics. We are the ones who assign them meaning. We are the ones who decided that red means passion and green means wealth. But there's one more member of the Beryl family we need to mention. The red beryl. This is the rarest of them all. For a long time, people called it red emerald, but that's technically incorrect. It's Bixbite. It's found in only one place on Earth, the Wawa Mountains of Utah. It's a geological impossibility. Beryl usually forms in granites and pegmatites, but red beryl formed in rhyolite, a volcanic rock. It required a specific set of low-pressure, high-temperature circumstances that only happen once. It's a beautiful, deep raspberry red, and it's tiny. Most crystals are barely a carat. If you own a red beryl, you own something rarer than diamond, rarer than ruby, rarer than almost anything else on the planet. It's the ultimate trophy for the collector who understands the chemistry. It's a beryl trying to be a ruby. It's a mimic. And then there's the Padparadska sapphire, the jewel of the Corundum family. It's the only variety of Corundum that has a special name other than ruby. Padparadska comes from the Sinhalese word for lotus blossom. It's this impossible mix of pink and orange. It looks like a sunset. It's caused by a delicate balance of chromium and iron and color centers in the crystal lattice. If the balance is off by even a tiny bit, it's just a pink sapphire or an orange sapphire. But when it hits that perfect middle ground, it becomes legendary. It's the holy grail of sapphires. So we have the big three: ruby, sapphire, emerald. Ruby is the blood, sapphire is the sky, emerald is the earth. They represent the three primary spheres of our existence, and they represent the three ways nature can organize chaos into beauty. The ruby organizes chaos through intensity. It takes the light and amplifies it, turning it into a laser beam of red. The sapphire organizes chaos through structure. It builds a fortress of aluminum and oxygen that nothing can break. The emerald organizes chaos through acceptance. It takes the impurities, the cracks, the water, the salt, and it builds a house around them. It becomes a garden. Next time you see an engagement ring, take a closer look. Is it a diamond? Boring. That's just carbon. It's common. We burn carbon to cook burgers, but if you see a colored stone, you're seeing a miracle of contamination. You're seeing what happens when the earth gets messy. If you're going to buy an emerald, buy it for its color, not its clarity. Accept the Jardin. Love the fractures. They're the proof that it's real. Synthetic emeralds are too perfect. They look like green Jolly Ranchers. A real emerald looks like a piece of the jungle frozen in glass. If you're going to buy a ruby, look for the glow. Take it out into the sunlight. If it looks dark and maroon like a garnet, it's probably got too much iron in it. Iron kills fluorescence. You want a stone that looks like it's plugged into an electrical socket. That's the chromium singing. And if you're going to buy a sapphire, look for the silk. Don't be afraid of a little sleepiness in the stone. A totally transparent sapphire can sometimes look like glass, but a sapphire with a little bit of silk has a velvety texture that softens the light and makes the blue look deeper. These stones have outlived empires. The emeralds in the Spanish treasury outlived the Spanish Empire. The sapphires in the British crown jewels will outlive the British monarchy. The rubies in the turbulence of the Mogok Valley will outlive the governments that fight over them. We are temporary custodians. We pay thousands of dollars to hold onto these rocks for a few decades, maybe pass them down to our kids, and then eventually they go back into the market or back into the ground. There's a melancholic beauty in that we are so fragile. Our bodies are soft. We break easily. We die quickly. Maybe that's why we love Corundum so much. We want to attach ourselves to something that doesn't break. We want to borrow a little bit of that immortality. And maybe that's why we love emeralds, because they remind us of ourselves. They are beautiful, yes, but they are full of cracks. They need to be handled with care. They need to be oiled and polished and protected from the hard knocks of the world. An emerald is the most human of the gemstones. So, which are you? Are you the unyielding fluorescent ruby, the stoic heavenly sapphire, or the fractured vibrant emerald? It's a question of chemistry, but it's also a question of character. I'm Cody, and this has been the Mystic Apothecary. We've dissected the big three. We've broken them down to their atoms and built them back up to their myths. If you enjoyed this geological deep dive, if you liked peeling back the layers of the earth to see the machinery underneath, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and remember, the next time you pick up a stone, you aren't just holding a mineral, you're holding a survivor. Treat it with respect, because it will be here long after you're gone. Stay curious, stay grounded, and don't bang your emeralds against the table.